For us, starting to use tallow and lard was kind of like a mental hurdle. The last 2 years, we have successfully transitioned to using lard and tallow in our everyday cooking, and then avocado oil and olive oil are kind of set aside for certain dishes or uses, and it's cut down on the cost of that, but also it's something we get from our butcher when we buy meat.
So I'm gonna start some kitchen projects, but nothing really too involved. I need to prep some stuff for our meals this week. But the first thing I'm gonna do is I finally have enough tomatoes to do a batch of tomato sauce, and I had these in the freezer to collect enough from my garden. And now I'm just gonna pour everything onto, I'm gonna take out all this water, but I'm gonna pour all these on in my turkey roasting pan, and then I'm gonna roast it in the oven while we do school, maybe an hour, hour and a half, and then I'll be able to blend it up and then finish it on the stove with some more spices if it needs it. I did collect some green onions and some herbs from the garden, some green peppers, and a bunch of tomatoes. All different sizes. I know I didn't plant enough of the normal tomatoes you would use for sauce, like the Romas, but it is what I had, and we didn't eat them near as much fresh, so this will work.
If you put whole tomatoes into the freezer, when you take them out and let them sit and defrost just a little bit, the skins really peel off pretty easily. So I went ahead and did that before I threw this all into the oven. I had thrown some garlic cloves and some herbs to help that roasting process to really infuse those flavors. It was probably in the oven about an hour and a half, and then I pulled it out and let it cool down a little bit before I pulled out my immersion blender and blended everything up and tasted it, added some salt and pepper. I always have a helper in the kitchen, so she is helping me do lunch while I do this little mini project here real quick. Blended it with my immersion blender, and I don't have a food mill. I think that's what it's called. You could do applesauce or tomato sauce, but I do have a bowl and a metal mesh sieve, so that is why I did to strain out the chunks and also all of the seeds, and it came out actually really smooth. I'm surprised at how smooth it came out. And although this isn't a huge batch of tomato sauce, I actually have a bucket full of green tomatoes on my counter right now because even though it's October, my garden tomatoes and certain things were not ready to give up in the garden. The weather's just been so weird this year. So I have green tomatoes, and as they ripen, I've just been throwing them into the freezer. And so I will have another batch here soon. And then I pulled off the last couple peppercini peppers and made a brine for the refrigerator. These were so good. They're almost gone already. So next year I know to plant some more banana peppers. And then switching days, this was the next day. I am doing a few different kitchen projects just to get prep for the couple days ahead. I like to prep usually twice a week, just a few days to have some meals or snacks or different things, components of meals ready to kind of help me out and help pull stuff together a little bit faster. And I've noticed we've been eating a lot of chips and crackers from the store. And today I decided to do a batch of popcorn. I don't know why I get into a routine that we eat it and then we don't, and then I forget about it. So I like to do coconut oil, and then I'll put 2 or 3 kernels in while the coconut oil melts, and those first couple will pop, and then I'll add more popcorn and some salt. And then I just keep shaking this a little bit so it doesn't burn. And then we have 2 different ways that we like to have popcorn. I'll put the popcorn in there, drizzle it with some avocado oil if I'm prepping it for the next couple days. If we're eating this fresh, I'll do butter, but the oil will stay a little shelf stable a little bit more. But today I'm just doing some white cheddar powder that I get from Azure Standard, and then the oil helps that powder stay on the popcorn, and then I'll usually add a little bit more salt. And like I said, I was prepping this ahead, so this went into a glass mason jar, and then we'll eat it over the next couple days. And I'm tasting it for the salt. And then next up is another little project that can be done and made ahead for the week, and that is some croutons. So I'm drizzling it with my favorite olive oil from Oliveda, and then I just do salt, pepper, a little bit of basil, and I just mix it up a little bit. I had the oven on a lot today, so I was trying to do some projects that would use the oven up, and so I'm using that heat wisely. And then this just mixed up, and then I put it in. It takes a little bit more time in the oven because my bread crumbles were from the freezer, so it probably took a good 15 or 20 minutes, and I shook it around a couple times in the oven, and then I let it cool completely on the counter, and then I just add it to a mason jar. This week I planned on having some chicken Caesar salad. The croutons can go on top of that, but also my kids actually like the croutons just as like a cracker, so it's a good reminder too that I can make that instead of buying chips from the store, to try to get away from that a little bit more. And then biscuits. I feel like if my family could say one of my top 3 things that they love that I make, one of them is biscuits. And I feel like I can never have enough. These biscuits are awesome to prep ahead and have in the freezer, so I don't have to stand here and make them every single time we want biscuits. I use them in a few different ways also. I'm making them a little bit ahead right now, so I just lay them on a cookie sheet and then I flash freeze them and then throw them in a bag. Also end up topping that in a shepherd's pie type of the dinner later on that you'll see in a minute. And then we are back to those croutons. I said I just keep my croutons in a mason jar, and then I use this wooden lid. It is not airtight, so I feel like if there's any moisture or anything left in there after it's been cooled down, it can escape from using this mason jar lid versus one of my leak-proof lids. So I like using these wooden ones. They're not going to go stale because these croutons will be gone within the few days. And then here is that dinner I had said. It's basically a shepherd's pie, or I guess a cottage pie topped with biscuits, and everyone enjoys it.